The world never expected the collapse to happen this way. It wasn't in the headlines, it wasn't on a red carpet, and it wasn't through some carefully managed interview on a glossy magazine cover. It was at midnight, in the quiet hours when most people were asleep, that the video leaked. And with just a few trembling words, millions of hearts shattered. A woman with tears streaming down her face whispered into the camera, her voice shaking with grief. "I am Malcolm-Jamal Warner's only wife," she said, barely able to look into the lens. "And I am not fighting for money. I am fighting for my husband's name." The internet froze. It was one of those rare moments where the entire world seemed to hold its breath at once. Within minutes, the clip was being shared across every social media platform. People woke their friends, sent frantic messages, posted reactions online. For weeks, the story had been clear. At least that's what everyone thought. The narrative had been painted in sharp detail by Tracy Ellis Ross, who claimed to be Malcolm's grieving widow. She had the pictures, the alleged DNA results, and a heartbreaking tale of a secret love story hidden from the world. People believed it. They believed because Tracee was convincing, because she carried the aura of a Hollywood queen, because the receipts she presented looked too real to deny. Headlines declared her the woman who had been wronged, the wife hidden in the shadows. But in one heartbreaking moment, everything flipped. This wasn't just some random stranger trying to chase clout. This wasn't a woman hoping to step into the spotlight with stories that could easily be debunked. This was someone who had stayed silent her entire life. No red carpets, no Instagram, no interviews, no magazine covers, nothing. She was invisible to the public. And yet she carried the receipts that silenced all the noise. She placed them one by one in front of the camera. The official marriage license signed in Malcolm's unmistakable hand. The hospital files with his name on them. The death certificate stamped with finality, and the bombshell, a $200 million insurance payout already in her name. But even those pieces of paper weren't what broke the world. What broke it was her trembling voice when she said, "If Tracee's marriage is real, then it means my husband had 2 wives. And my heart knows he could never do that." Those words, fragile but powerful, cut deeper than any headline. Fans collapsed emotionally. They watched as a woman drowning in grief fought not for money, not for fame, but for her husband's truth. A legacy built over decades now seemed to be torn apart by claims of betrayal, and in the middle of it all was a little girl, allegedly Malcolm's daughter, caught in a crossfire of lies, papers, and headlines she never asked for. Imagine being that child. Imagine waking up one morning and being celebrated as the heir of a beloved icon, and the next day being labeled as a fraud. Imagine seeing your face plastered across news feeds, not because of anything you did, but because adults around you were waging wars with receipts and lawyers. Every day she wondered, am I his, or am I just another pawn in a game for money and fame? This was no longer about money. This was about truth, about love, about the memory of a man who gave his life to art and honor, but whose name was now being shredded in the most painful way. And as the midnight video spread across the globe, the silence that followed was deafening. Millions of screens reflected not just a woman in tears, but the collapse of a story that so many thought they understood. For weeks, Tracy Ellis Ross had been seen as the grieving widow, the keeper of Malcolm's hidden truth. She painted herself as the secret wife, the woman who carried his heart in silence while the world never knew. Social media ate it up. Fans cried for her, believed her, defended her against skeptics. Headlines declared her bravery, her tragedy, her strength. But in that single clip, the shaking hands, the tear-stained face, the undeniable receipts laid bare, everything began to unravel. Suddenly, Tracee's story didn't feel so airtight. Suddenly, people began to wonder if they had been fooled. The woman in that video didn't crave attention. She didn't wear makeup for the camera. She wasn't polished or rehearsed. She looked broken, raw, and exhausted. This wasn't the performance of a Hollywood star. This was grief in its truest form. And the internet, for the first time, saw a side of Malcolm's story that Tracee had never shown them. She placed the documents in front of the camera with trembling hands. The marriage license carried Malcolm's signature, proof of vows exchanged long before Tracee's claims. The hospital files showed his name connected to hers. The death certificate was a gut punch of finality, and then the insurance payout check left the internet gasping. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "This was not about fame. This was not about clout. This was about my husband and protecting what's left of his name." And then came the words that split the internet in half. If Tracy's marriage is real, then my husband lived a double life. But I swear to you, he was not that man. The comments section exploded. Fans screamed. Some cried in disbelief. Others turned on Tracee instantly, flooding her social media with questions she couldn't answer. Screenshots of the documents went viral within minutes. Hashtags like Dark Justice for Malcolm, Dark Truth Over Clout, and Dark Tracee Collapse trended worldwide. But the chaos didn't stay online. It spilled into the courts. Her lawyers moved fast, filing emergency motions to present the documents officially. And with them came a bombshell that no one saw coming. Handwritten letters from Malcolm himself were introduced as evidence. Letters scribbled in his own hand, his voice echoing through the ink on the page. In those letters, he spoke not of two wives, but of one. He detailed his love, his trust, his fears, and his wishes. That if anything ever happened to him, it would be his wife, the woman in that midnight video, who would carry his legacy forward. The world wasn't ready for that, because suddenly, this wasn't just receipts. This was Malcolm himself speaking from beyond the grave. Imagine being Tracee in that moment. For weeks, she commanded sympathy, headlines, and adoration. For weeks, she stood tall as the grieving widow. And now, piece by piece, every ounce of credibility she had carefully built was crumbling. Her claims were no longer romantic tragedy. They began to look like a calculated lie, a ploy, a performance. And fans began to ask the haunting question, was Tracee ever really in love, or was she simply playing the role of a grieving widow for the world to see? But the most heartbreaking part wasn't the battle between two women. It was the little girl at the center of it all. The teenager thrust into the spotlight, her identity shredded across social media. One day she was being called Malcolm's heir. The next she was being labeled a fraud. Strangers posted cruel memes about her. Journalists camped outside her school. Every friend she had whispered behind her back asking, is she really his, or is she just a pawn in Tracee's story? That kind of pressure isn't just cruel, it's unbearable. Classmates leaked that she stopped coming to school. Teachers whispered that she cried in the bathroom whenever Malcolm's name was mentioned. One leak said she muttered under her breath, I wish I didn't exist because maybe then they'd leave me alone. Those words broke millions. Because whether she was truly Malcolm's daughter or not, she was still just a child. And children shouldn't be forced to carry wars built by adults. Yet wars were exactly what this had become. Tracee, once cheered as a grieving widow, now found herself cornered. Paparazzi captured images of her breaking down, shielding her face, screaming at cameras. Her team rushed to release statements claiming the documents were fake, the video edited, insisting she too had proof. But the tide had turned, sympathy evaporated. What remained was doubt, questions, and the collapse of an image built in the spotlight. Meanwhile, Malcolm's true wife, the woman who never asked for fame, became the tragic heroine of this story. She didn't post selfies, didn't stage appearances. She simply showed up to court, clutching Malcolm's letters, whispering through tears, I am only fighting for my husband's truth. Fans wept with her. They were left torn between two stories. But deep down, most realized the truth lived in the receipts, in the letters, in Malcolm's own words. The question now wasn't just who Malcolm's wife was. The question became, how far would Tracee go to protect her collapsing empire? Because if one midnight video could shatter her story, what would happen when the courtroom lights came on and the evidence was weighed by a judge? The silence in the courtroom was bone-chilling. On one side sat Malcolm's real wife, pale, trembling, gripping the stack of documents that already turned the internet upside down. On the other sat Tracee, her lawyers flanking her, her eyes red from sleepless nights, her body tense with pride and fear. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, fans filled the gallery. The judge's voice thundered, bring forth the evidence. And just like that, the collapse truly began. Malcolm's marriage license was presented first. His signature, her name, the seal, undeniable. Gasps erupted. Tracee's lawyers objected, shouting forgery, but the judge inspected it closely. The crowd knew this wasn't flimsy paper. This was real. Then came the letters. Each one Malcolm wrote with his own hand. If anything happens to me, my wife will handle everything. She is my heart. She is my everything. As each was read, tears streamed down faces. Even the court clerk faltered. Malcolm's love, his faith, his loyalty pointed to one woman, and it wasn't Tracee. Tracy's face crumbled. The aura, the confidence, the careful performance all shattered. Cameras caught her whispering frantically to her lawyers. Screenshots of her collapse went viral instantly. Hashtags like Tracee breaks trended globally. But the most damning blow wasn't the letters or the license. It was video evidence. A close friend provided an unseen recording of Malcolm in his final months. Sitting at his kitchen table, tired but smiling, he spoke into the camera. "If anything happens to me, I want people to remember the truth. I had one wife, one woman. She knows who she is. I pray she never has to fight for what's already hers." The courtroom froze. Tears erupted. The judge allowed it. It was undeniable. Tracee broke. She leapt to her feet, screaming, "He loved me too! You don't understand!" The gallery gasped. The poised queen of Hollywood collapsed in front of the world. Her screams, her breakdown, her desperation were captured by cameras and blasted across the internet. The public turned harsh. Protesters screamed outside, demanding justice, calling Tracee a fraud. News anchors wept on live TV. Fans created heartbreaking edits, blending Malcolm's voice with his wife's tears. But behind the spectacle was the little girl, shattered. With every viral headline, her identity crumbled. Reports leaked that she locked herself in her room, whispering, "Was he really my father, or just a story?" Tracee's team, desperate, announced a DNA test would prove Malcolm was her father. The court agreed. The world held its breath. The results arrived. Silence filled the courtroom. The judge opened the envelope. The probability of paternity between Malcolm-Jamal Warner and the minor child is 0. Time stopped. The girl's world ended. Overnight, she was stripped of identity. Reporters swarmed. Social media mocked her. She went from Malcolm's daughter to the child of lies. She was just a child, yet her life was destroyed. Malcolm's wife wept in court. She never wanted revenge. She wanted only her husband's truth. Even in victory, her heart ached, because what joy exists when a child's soul is crushed? The fallout was brutal. Hollywood abandoned Tracee. Sponsors cut ties. Films were canceled. Magazines labeled her the collapse of a queen. Friends distanced themselves. Paparazzi filmed her screaming, "I loved him," before being dragged away by security. Malcolm's family bore scars that would never heal. His name was forever tied to scandal. His wife whispered outside court, "I just want him remembered for the man he was, not the circus." Fans cried with her. The little girl, admitted into counseling, asked questions no child should. "Why did my mom lie? Why does the world hate me?" Teachers reported she no longer spoke. Neighbors said she stopped playing. Her childhood was stolen. Vigils were held. Fans lit candles, painted murals with his face, surrounding him with words like truth, love, legacy. But no mural could erase the tragedy. A wife left broken, a child left lost, a woman left destroyed, a man's memory scarred. This wasn't entertainment. This was tragedy, raw and devastating, a mirror to humanity's flaws. And one truth remained. When lies are built on the back of love, everyone loses. Malcolm's wife lost her peace. Tracee lost her crown. The girl lost her innocence. And the world lost the chance to remember Malcolm for the man he was. A man who gave laughter and hope, remembered now through scandal. The saddest part is Malcolm never got to defend himself. His voice was silenced when the world needed it most. The question remains, what do we do with this truth? Do we let his memory drown in hashtags? Or do we fight to remember the man he really was? Because beyond the collapse, beyond the courtroom, beyond the lies, there was Malcolm. A husband, an artist, a man who wanted love, peace, and legacy. If we don't hold on to that truth, then all this pain was for nothing. So share his story, keep his name alive, not for the scandal, but for the truth. Because even in betrayal, love and truth remain stronger.